Hi everyone! Welcome everyone! Welcome, welcome! Welcome everyone. We'll get started in about a minute. Welcome to today's show. Let me know where you are logging on from and what are you baking this weekend. Let me know. What's your summer bake? What are you working on? Or maybe you're not baking at all. I don't know. Tell me. There. Waving at everyone I can wave at. Great. All right, it is 12 noon Pacific, bakers, and we're going to get started with today's show. So first off, as I said just now, let me know where you're logging on from and what are you baking this weekend. I really would love to know. You know, our baking energy changes in the summer. I know mine does, less bread. I'm looking for quicker bakes, cooler bakes. So are you grilling pizza? Are you making popsicles? Are you making ice cream? What are you doing? All right, so first question came in from one of our very talented bakers, Emerald Cupcakes of LA, and she asked me, I'm waving at her right now, I know she's in the audience, giving her a shout out. She asked me about how to get more color or more artistic flair into pie dough. All right, so this question, I had to think for a second, and then there are many bakers out there that are really pushing pie dough and pies to their limit. And I think it all started with a really beautiful book called The Artful Pie. I'll repeat that for you. The Artful Pie, it's available. I've seen it on Amazon and other book sites. It's really, really pretty. I haven't purchased it yet because I'm just afraid I will be up all night recreating the beautiful pies in that book, and right now I need my sleep. And there's also on Instagram and just all over the internet painting on pies. So to answer your question for how to get more color into pie dough, the best thing is to use gel color like this, made by Wilton or Americolor or any of the other gel color companies. Americolor and Wilton come to mind. They also make gel color like this in little bottles. What you want to avoid pretty much always, unless you're dyeing Easter eggs, is you want to avoid supermarket food color. It's actually great for Easter eggs, but it's not so great for anything else. Anyway, so you want to use gel color, and you want to thin it out with vodka, not water. Your other option, if you want to avoid the alcohol, is lemon extract. So you thin out the gel color, and then with food grade paintbrushes, you paint, and usually what folks are doing is they're using cutters. You know, I'm sure, how many of you have like tons of cookie cutters I know I do. But if you can see, and you can find these on the internet, you can find them on cookware stores, but there are all sorts of stamp cutters available. So you would roll your pie dough or a piece of your pie dough out and in 1/8 of an inch thick. Then you're going to chill it, like roll it out, put it on a baking tray, chill it for a half hour. This is critical, and this is also a great step for you cookie bakers out there. You roll, and then you chill, and then you cut, and then you chill again. Now for our artful pies, I'm going to steal that for this episode. I don't think anybody will care. For our, let's call them our artsy, our painterly pies, you're going to paint raw dough. You could also paint after it's baked, but you'll get the most set color if you paint the dough raw. So that's basically how we would do it. There is another option for how to get color into pie dough, and that is to add a percentage of freeze-dried fruit powder that you pulverize in your little one of these. Get yourselves one of these little food processors. Doesn't have to be Cuisinart, but just a little food processor or a big one. But when I was really at the height of my macaron madness, I really fell in love with my small food processor. So you would pulverize the freeze-dried fruit powder, and then you would add it to the pie dough. It doesn't really, you don't have to really subtract maybe just a small percentage of flour, but it will give you, especially the raspberry and the strawberry, can give you a pretty pink dough. I studied with an amazing baker named Peter Ewan, and he was using these freeze-dried powders in his laminated doughs, and they were gorgeous. But remember, when we add color to raw dough, we really have to control the bake. Now, I don't know if another one of our bakers who does a lot with, she often will post challahs that are different colors, where the strands are different colors. You have to be careful with the bake. You don't want the temperature to be too high, so we have more of a slow bake. We're baking at a slightly lower temperature, longer, because otherwise our product is going to take on crust color, and our beautiful, let's say, our raspberry croissant is now tan. Or let's say you make a raspberry pie dough, and then you have a pear and fresh raspberry filling in there. And that's my segue to the next thing we're going to talk about. You have like this beautiful pear raspberry filling and your raspberry perfumed and beautiful pink pie crust. You just want to make sure that it stays the color, that you keep the color. That's what we want to do. And always know that when the baking processes kick in, there will be a little bit of change. If you want no change, then paint with food color before or after the bake. You can paint after or before, but I think before for pie dough is the most successful. Okay? All right, let's see. And I'm peach pies, yes, they're wonderful. Esty, welcome from Israel. And carrot cakes in North Carolina. That's awesome. Well, I'm so happy you guys are baking this weekend and just enjoying summer fruit, because it really is fantastic right now. This is a great time to bake. So piggyback after last week's demo, piggybacking on last week's demo for our peach galette, I wanted to talk about pie fillings. And remember last week, I was answering Patty's question about how to make galettes not be soupy, drippy, so that they would bake up clean, The French have a great word for that, soigné, So then thinking about just a regular pie. Sometimes with summer fruits, we'll make a summer fruit pie, we'll follow a recipe, we'll do everything they say, and we end up with a really liquidy filling. So what do we use? Well, most recipes will call for cornstarch or flour, and they leave it at that, but there's problems with just plain cornstarch. Cornstarch really needs to boil to activate. That's why when we use it in a sauce in savory cooking, the directions will always say, mix the cornstarch and the little cold water together, and then add it to boiling liquid, and then it's simmering or boiling liquid, and then it thickens up, right? So it doesn't really thicken up unless it's been boiled. Now we're baking our pies. You can bake your pie anywhere usually from 400 degrees, so that internal temperature is not quite boiling. It's not getting hot enough. Then there's this other thing about cornstarch. I mean, I don't mean to be throwing cornstarch shade here. I love this stuff, but the problem with cornstarch, that if it sits too long, the starch molecules break. And when the starch molecules break, it just turns to water. That's why takeout, when you have takeout in your refrigerator, you put it in the refrigerator, the sauce is really nice and thick and lovely, and then the next day you go to heat up your takeout for lunch, and the sauce is turned to water. That's because on the molecular level, the bonds have broken. Whoop! And then they just cannot, they cannot thicken. They cannot hold up. So cornstarch is great for many, many things, but there's a better option for pies, especially our juicy summer fruit. All right, the other thing before I leave pies, flour, regular all-purpose flour. But the problem with flour is that it often leaves kind of a pasty aftertaste. And it also doesn't set up, it doesn't hold up very well, okay? So, enter instant clear gel. I know it's backward and I apologize, but instant clear gel is modified, it's a modified cornstarch product. There's absolutely nothing sinister in this at all. All they have done is pre-gelatinized the starch and modified it so that it works. Not only does it thicken, but it cuts clean, and this is kind of magical. You can make your pie, assemble your pie, freeze it, and it will hold up. It'll hold up in the freezer. So here's a romantic notion. You could actually make a strawberry rhubarb pie, like a nice double crust strawberry rhubarb pie right now, before strawberries and rhubarb really go out of season. You could assemble it, wrap it really well, put it in a Ziploc freezer bag. It's double wrapped, triple wrapped, then in a freezer bag, and you could then pull it out and bake it for Thanksgiving. Wouldn't that be amazing? I think that would be amazing. Anyway, clear gel. So today's demo is going to be on clear gel. Before I jump into demo, I'm going to just see if there's any questions. Oh, music car, that doesn't work. I am so sorry. We have tried that before and it's just too awkward. So one day, I promise I will not be so low tech but the low tech is actually kind of fun. So, okay, I've talked about this. You can get it on Amazon, and then you can get it directly from the King Arthur Company for their brand. But there's also a brand called Hoosier, and must be from Indiana, and it's also great as well. I'm just, super loyal to our friends at King Arthur, so I clicked, and this arrived in 2 days. All right, so there's a couple of things. Let me tell you what I've got going right now. The oven is preheating to 400 degrees, and I'm not sure I told you guys this before. If you've seen any of my Craftsy Live pie demos that I do around Thanksgiving time, you'll be like, oh yeah, heard this one before. But I have a baking tray preheating in the oven. Why don't I show you? My little pie bakers. Preheating along with the oven is a half sheet tray lined with aluminum foil, shiny side down, okay? Because in front of your eyes, I'm going to create the filling, and I'm going to fill a pie shell that's in the refrigerator. And this pie shell, once we're ready to bake, is going to go right on that hot baking tray. One of the challenges with pies is to get that bottom crust caramelized. A lot of times it's really pale. And the other thing we're fighting is that our fillings are liquidy, so we often have a little underbaked pie dough under our filling. So some people really like that. I used to love it as a kid. But if we bake on a hot tray, the more heat we generate, the more bake we get throughout our pie. Put in the comments if you know what I mean. Oh my God, Don Deco, I apologize. I didn't get a Canadian source. I will do that in future. Thank you so much for logging on from Canada. I am not quite sure, but I'm sure it's available. Instant clear gel, okay? Anybody from Canada on the show, if you could put in the comments if you have found it, let us know. All right, so there's a couple steps with clear gel that are going to be different from when you work with cornstarch or flour. And on my Monday Instagram post, I'm gonna give you ratios for different types of fruit and different amounts of clear gel to use with each. Okay? I always try to follow up Saturday's show with information. If there was any information that you guys need, you will find it in Monday's post. All right. So the first thing you're going to do, whatever the recipe calls for, however, if it calls for a half cup of sugar, you're going to divide that amount of sugar in half. So a half cup of sugar is 99 grams, so 50 and 50 grams. So you've got sugar 1 and sugar 2. You have 2 increments of sugar. And the first increment is going to go into your fruit. And you're going to let this sit for 20 minutes. You're going to basically macerate your fruit. Basically, the way we would marinate a piece of meat. Well, we're macerating our fruit so that the sugar draws out moisture from the fruit. I did not add any moisture to these cherries. Full disclosure, they are a bag of frozen cherries from Trader Joe's because I no longer have my deluxe cherry pitter. My ex-chef Daniel has it. I don't see him on the show, but that's fine because he uses it far more than I do. All right, so half the sugar goes into your fruit, whatever it is. And some fruits are juicier than others. That's it. Berries, cherries are going to leach out a lot more juice than apples or pears. So we make some adjustments. All right. Oh, the other thing you can do while your fruit is macerating, that's the correct term, I'm going to add a little almond extract to my cherries, because almond and cherries, they marry. They're a match made in heaven. And if you're interested in food pairings, there's a wonderful book called The Flavor Bible, which I'm sure many in the audience have. You can find it on the internet pretty easily, and it will guide you to match like I just did. It's a whole book of ingredients and then other ingredients that go well with them. So this has been 20 minutes. I just added a little bit of almond extract. You could do a whisper of vanilla, whatever you want. And then the next step, and this is very important for working with this instant clear gel, it must be mixed with part of the sugar in the recipe. And the reason for that is the sugar helps the instant clear gel not clump, and it slows down the rate of hydration. So what does that mean? Sugar is always going to get moisture first. This is a fast-acting starch, but we don't really need it to work like sa. We need it to work quickly, but not instantly. So the sugar kind of buffers things. You know, sugar is one of those ingredients, it's literally like a bouncer at a club. That's what sugar is. And sometimes it turns into a bully, and sometimes it's just kind of like hanging out. All right. Now, the next thing, if you have a teeny tiny whisk, that works great. You can also grab a dinner fork. That works great too. You're going to mix your sugar and starch together. Remember, this is the second sugar. You know what, and it doesn't matter if it's a recipe off the internet or your grandmother's recipe or a recipe from an old cookbook. You know, if it says a half cup of sugar, then you're going to always, when you're using the instant clear gel, you're going to divide that in two, half for the fruit, half for the instant clear gel. Any questions before I dump this? Okay, throw them in the comments. Then in it goes. Also, if your fruit is really sweet, you can reduce some of the sugar. You can use organic sugar. You can use but pretty much we're looking for a granular sugar. Now, I just did it, and you can see that it's thickening up right now in front of our very eyes. So here's what's really cool. If you're not sure, I'm pretty sure that this is going to work out fine, but let's say you're not sure, maybe it's a new recipe, you can hold back a little bit of the sugar and you can add more clear gel. The main thing is that you're not going to just open up the clear gel and start dusting it in. It has to be mixed with that sugar. But this is really beautiful, and why we do this is this product gives us a slice of pie where the filling doesn't soup out. This gives us the option of freezing our unbaked pies and then baking them at a later date, which is actually kind of, like I said, it's romantic. It's kind of sexy even. I mean, I know the freezer case of the supermarket is filled with pies, but it's so much fun, bakers, when we create our own pies, our own custom flavors, our own fillings. We do it ourselves. If anybody decides to do a strawberry rhubarb pie for next Thanksgiving, please tag me. I'd love to see like the raw going into the freezer and then another photo at Thanksgiving time. All right, let me get the pie crust. So here's my pie crust, which was actually, when did we do our pies? Last week? Yeah, last week. So I made extra and froze it, thawed it in the refrigerator overnight, and then I rolled it out about an hour and a half ago, and then it went into the refrigerator so it holds its shape, all right? Now you might think, what's all this chilling about with pastry? The reason we chill pastry is because we're manipulating the baking processes. We want the protein in the dough from the flour to coagulate before the butter, see those big old chunks of butter which are going to make some nice flake, before they run out, all right? Now here's something, you know, I've been threatening to do a sustainable baking channel on TikTok, but I just want to show you guys, disposable pie pans can be reused. So I reuse them until they get pretty scary. This one's actually scary. This one was better, but whenever I use any kind of a disposable pan, I double it because it just doesn't have the insulation of a regular pie pan. So I really recommend that you do that. Disposable pans are great when we're taking something to a gathering, but just know that unless they get totally trashed, you can reuse them. I have a question from JG111, and they're asking, how long can you keep rolled dough in the freezer? 1 to 2 months, well wrapped, well wrapped. Wrap in plastic wrap, and then into like a Ziploc bag or a Ziploc freezer bag, okay? And, all right, so now, the next thing, we talked about this with the galette. This is unbaked, so all the baking is going to happen in one go. This is not blind baked, obviously, it's raw. So we need something, and even though we have our beautiful, look at this, it's like jam. Look at how awesome. Oh my God, this is not going anywhere compared to the soup that we can get. So I have some butter streusel. Put it in the comments if you're a butter streusel person. There's regular streusel, also known as crumb topping, or butter streusel, which is no spice. So it's really, I mean, I love streusel, period. But butter streusel is really kind of wonderful. Especially in summer where we're not really thinking, you know, we're not really thinking spice. That's gonna happen soon enough. Now when you make a streusel or a crumb topping, that can stay in the freezer for 4 months, no problem. And yes, Patty, you could do this filling for galettes as well. So I'm putting a little bit in my pie crust, and then I'm going to dump my filling on top. And I'm going to grab my little baby spatula, because bakers, you need every bit of this. Okay, so I'm going to scrape this until it's clean, like I was working in a fine dining French kitchen where every bowl has got to look super clean. Back in the day, or you would be yelled at. Okay, then I'm going to smooth this out. So the way I'm going to do this pie, and I'll post photos probably on Monday, is like a crumb topping pie or a streusel pie. Sometimes they're called a Dutch crumb pie. I don't know why. And this will take all my streusel, all of it. Now, one thing when you work with crumb topping, and I see this often with my baking students at the culinary school I teach at, you want it to cover, but you also want it to breathe a little bit. You see how there's really nice coverage, but there's also a little bit of the fruit filling showing through. Now, I could wrap this sucker and freeze it for 6 months if I wrapped it well enough. All right? Again, it's in that wrapping. So more long term, the more the more you have to wrap. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw this in the oven very quickly. And then I'm going to take the rest of your questions, and we're almost done with the show. But with any of your pie baking, the hot baking tray is the game changer. So, and I've said it before, and I'm starting at 400 degrees, and I'm going to let the pie bake for a half hour, and then probably at the half hour mark, I'll turn it down to 350. Fruit pies take at least 45 minutes, usually closer to an hour, and a double crust pie definitely takes quite a while. So don't short that baking time, bakers. Let it go. And crust color is not always an indicator. Sometimes when you use like the aluminum or the disposable pans, you actually have to take it out and then just kind of check between the pan and the crust to make sure you've got some caramelization. Okay? All right, in our last couple of minutes, excuse me for reaching over here. Oh, Don Deco, that's great news that your husband uses the pans. And then yes, Patty, yep, we talked about this filling would work great for a blueberry galette, but you would want to make sure that you had a good bed of streusel on the bottom because blueberries are so juicy. Also, fresh blueberries are quite different in water content than frozen blueberries. Of course, the thing is when fruit is frozen, their ice crystals naturally form, and those ice crystals then melt when we thaw the fruit, and then we have excess moisture. Streusel to have, there's a couple things that I really recommend you know, and I recommend for your baker's pantry, and you can do these on a non-baking day so you have them, and that would be some, you know, make a batch of streusel, either butter streusel or cinnamon streusel, and if you like, I can put just a really basic streusel recipe on Monday's post. And then also a nice batch of cinnamon sugar, not too cinnamony, balanced properly. That's usually a cup of sugar to a tablespoon of cinnamon. So yeah, streusel is really versatile. It's a good ingredient to have around. So anyhow, well, that's pretty much it for today's show. For next week, since I had such a positive response to the baklava I posted on Wednesday. Would you like to see a baklava assembled start to finish for demo? You can DM me if that's something you would like to see. And I think it might be fun. It might add like 5 more minutes to the show, but it would definitely be fun to do. Lobster lover, you've got it. A nice recipe for butter streusel with a cinnamon variation. Great. All right, a few glimpses, you got it. Baklava recipe next week. All right, thank you for joining me, bakers. It's so lovely to be with you. Thank you for sharing your Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon with me. Now get back into the kitchen and start baking. Tag me in those bakes. I'll see you next week. Bye.